legislation and nationally, but also especially in the Ohio legislature. So Maryland's my companion, we go with our other organizations to make sure that legislation doesn't happen that will be contraindicating to our process, that will get in the way of an individual's wishes to donate. I think the most important piece of legislation for us, it is the most important piece, is the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act piece, and that's Ohio Revised Code 2108. And it basically deals with all issues relative to human gift law. But what that law establishes for Ohio is a first-person authorization registry that's basically managed with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. So we're one of the first states to really jump on board with that. When you register your decision, that's an advance directive, and we honor those advance directives in every case. We were actually honored recently nationally by the Department of Health Resources Service Administration for having one of the best functioning registries in the United States. So Ohio should be very proud of that. And given the size of Ohio and our influence politically when there's an election, we should also be an influence and a leader when it comes to these kinds of things. We also have worked on different pieces of legislation, our organization and others, to make sure that there's mandatory education and driver's education classes. When people are getting ready to get their license for the first time, it's mandatory that there be so many minutes of discussion about when you walk up to get your license, you're going to be asked, do you want to register? And what does that mean? And I think when you're 15, it's important to have that piece of information. I still think a 15-year-old will probably look to their mom and dad and say, what should I do? But I think it's important that they're informed. So we passed legislation to make that mandatory, and then we help contribute to that language to make sure that the language is appropriate and to make sure the discussion is up to date and current. We also help pass a living donor state tax credit. It's up to $10,000 if you're a living kidney donor, and you have expenses that you've incurred, including lost wages you can't replace, that haven't been replaced through an insurance or some sort of guarantee that you have. You can claim a tax credit up to $10,000 for that donation. So it's a great gift you give somebody if you're a living kidney donor, or in some cases living liver donor. And we wanted to at least make sure you can be recognized for the expenses you'll never get reimbursed for. And then we created the law that allowed us to have a Donate Life license plate. You might see, actually, it's the little symbol that you see if you watch Channel 10, you watch the school closings recently, you'll see Donate Life down at the bottom of the screen, or along with the listings for bad weather or school closings. That's the national brand for donation. And we also created legislation that allows individuals like myself to buy a Donate Life license plate. So, one of the things I want to just mention is it's important when you leave here today to look at your license. If you're not a registered donor, consider that. I think one of the challenges we have with what we do in educating people is to just get rid of some of those myths I mentioned. One was, if you show up to a hospital, if they find out you're a donor, they won't take care of you. Not true. And then what happens is when people get to about my age, we start to select out. We start to say, well, I've had some heart issues, I've had some, maybe a little diabetic, I'm a lousy donor, so they select out. And that's not true. You'd be amazed at who can donate. If you've had a cancer episode and you're cancer-free for a period of time, you still can be a life-saving organ donor. Because frankly, at the time that situation comes up, you won't need those organs anymore. So that's a big part of what we have to do. Take a look at your driver's license, see if you're an organ donor, and consider it if you're not registered.